Hi, welcome to Miss Music, or welcome back to Miss Music, and welcome back to my Rush marathon, or my Rushathon, if you like, trying to get through as many Rush albums before I head off to Toronto. I'm actually kind of excited to be flying into YYZ Airport. That's incredible. But imagine this. It's 1975. Rush have just released their third album, and it's such a flop that the record label is basically ready to give up on them. Just imagine, no 2112, no Moving Pictures, no Tom Sawyer. It's all because of one famously awkward, wonderfully flawed, deeply weird record, Caress of Steel. So today I'm looking at the Rush album that almost killed their career and accidentally set them up, I think, for greatness. Now, as I said, I'm going to see Rush in Toronto in August. I wanted to see how many Rush albums I could get through before then. I'm working my way through every Rush album before I see them in Toronto this August. And today we've hit their third release. Caress of Steel is Rush's trickiest album, maybe. The title, to me, sounds a bit naff. It's almost like a parody of something out of Spinal Tap's Smell the Glove era. And the music in this bizarre mix is brilliant, sometimes boring and totally baffling. But it's also a huge what if in rock history. What if Caress of Steel had really finished the band in 1975? Neil Peart goes back to work for his dad as a parts manager. Geddy Lee takes over the family discount store. Alex Lifeson dutifully returns to school. Just imagine some alternative universes have no Rush as we know them, all because of this one record. It's incredibly rare, I think, that a band has the perfect combination of people to make something truly exceptional. You see it with bands like the Beatles, with Radiohead, with Led Zeppelin, and absolutely with Rush. And with Rush, that chemistry is crystal clear. If John Rutsey hadn't left, if they hadn't brought Neil in, then they would be a very different band, and I don't think they would have been as successful. By Caress of Steel, that classic lineup is there, but they're still figuring out what kind of band they are. And that's what makes this album so fascinating. You can hear them nearly throwing it all away, and you can hear the seeds of what is coming next. And if you're a Rush fan, you know what's coming next. So how does a band this talented mess up this badly? Let's walk through it, because Caress of Steel starts like a triumph and then drives straight into a ditch. The album actually opens strong with, I think, one of Rush's great early anthems, Bastille Day. Like Anthem from Fly By Night, this is Rush in full charge. Big historical theme, Geddy Lee's voice absolutely soaring, that thunderous melodic bass, and Alex Lifeson moving from pretty good rock guitarist to full-on sonic wizard. I mean, his guitar sounds great on that track. If the whole album were at the level of Bastille Day, we'd be talking about Caress of Steel as an underrated classic. And then I think I'm going bored.
I looked in the mirror today. My eyes just didn't seem so bright. I've lost a few more hairs. I think I'm going bald. I think I'm going bald.
What were they thinking? I don't think there is anything this lame in their back catalogue until 2004's Dog Years, which is another song I detest. But be honest, if you first heard this album on CD or in the streaming era when skipping took no effort, have you ever listened to this song twice on purpose? I genuinely pity anyone who bought this on vinyl and had to either get up and move the needle or just suffer through this song. I think it's a kind of silly joke song stuck on the album that's trying very hard to be epic and serious, and it's kind of tonal whiplash. To me, it doesn't fit at all. And then we get Lakeside Park. It's a nice song. It's pleasant. And I guess if you grew up in Canada and that park is part of your memories, I can imagine it hits hard as a piece of nostalgia. But for everyone else, it's fine, charming, but ultimately unforgettable. Side 2 is where Caress of Steel really goes off the rails, not in a wild experimental way, but in how did these three musicians this good, how did they come up with this? So let's start with the Necromancer. In my mind, there's very little here that sticks. I've listened to this track more times than I care to mention. 3 times this week, just prepping for this video. And every time it is the same experience. The track stops and it starts. It doesn't have any coherence. The sections don't quite gel. There are no hooks on this track. Nothing lodges in your memory. Every time I listen to it, it's like coming back and listening to the track for the first time because nothing is memorable. It feels like a band trying to write an epic without having yet learned how to make long-form songs actually engaging from start to finish. Then we get to the big closer, The Fountains of Lamenth. This one is better. You can sense a more ambitious structure, and there are moments that really work. But even here, it still doesn't quite come together as a satisfying whole. What is fascinating, though, is what you can hear inside this song, if you like. Riffs and rhythmic ideas that feel like prototypes, the thematic and narrative ambitions that aren't yet quite fully realized, little flashes of what is going to be refined and perfected on 2112. Listening to The Fountains of Lamenth now feels like eavesdropping on Rush while they're secretly rehearsing their own breakthrough. And this is where Caress of Steel becomes more than just a weird early Rush album. This is the album that nearly broke them. Poor sales, confused label, confused audiences, and a tour literally named by the band the Down the Tubes tour. Rush were under serious pressure to stop with the long songs and concept pieces and just write something commercial. You can imagine the suits at the record label screaming at them, give us a hit. And they could have listened, they could have pulled back, simplified, tried to chase the radio, and instead they doubled down, and you've got to love them for this. The failure of Caress of Steel is exactly what pushed them towards the all-or-nothing gamble of 2112, the album that changed everything for the Canadian three-piece. And I mean, what spirit. So even if you don't love Caress of Steel, even if you never want to hear I Think I'm Going Bald Again, it's the necessary misstep, I think, that Rush needed to find out who they really were. For me, working through the discography before seeing them in Toronto, Caress of Steel isn't an album I love, but it is an album I'm glad exists. It's the awkward, uncomfortable pivot point between promising hard rock band and one of the greatest progressive rock bands of all time. But what do you think? I mean, really, do you defend Caress of Steel? I've heard that some people do love it. Is the Necromancer secretly brilliant and I'm just missing it? There's something I cannot hear in that track. Or is this the Rush album that you always skip? I mean, I come back to it from time to time. It is interesting. Let me know in the comments and tell me what your favorite track is if you have one on this record. If you're following along as I go album by album before the Toronto show, hit the subscribe and don't miss the next stop, the album that changed everything, 2112. Thanks for listening.